Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Today in the rLounge, it's impressive, really. The distance between around the block and state prison is shorter than you think, especially when entitlement is behind the wheel. Father-in-law borrowed my car and sold it without asking, so I called the cops. I've been with my wife for 6 years total, married for 3 of those. Her father was always rubbed me the wrong way, but I dealt with it for her sake. The guy thinks the world owes him something, always has some excuse about why things aren't working out, why he needs help, why everyone has it easier. I collect vintage cars as a hobby because I can afford to and I enjoy it. I started with one about 8 years ago and built it up from there. It's something I'm passionate about. My father-in-law hates that. Every family gathering, there's some inside comment about how nice it must be to have money, how some people have all the luck, how he wishes he could just buy whatever he wants. Never mind that I worked hard to get where I am. Never mind that his broke situation is entirely his own doing. In his mind, I just lucked into everything and he got dealt a bad hand. My wife always makes excuses for him. Says he's going through a tough time. Says he means well. Says family is important and we need to be patient with him. I've been patient for 6 years and the tough time never seemed to end. At a certain point, you just have to accept that some people are just like that. So last week, he sends me a text asking to borrow my 67 Shelby GT500. Not my daily driver, my collector car. The one I spent 4 years restoring myself. Every part carefully selected, every detail perfect. The car is worth about $180,000, and that's a conservative estimate. Some similar models have sold for over $200,000 depending on condition. He says he wants to take it to a car show with some friends, just for the weekend. He'll take good care of it, promises he'll be careful. I read the text and immediately said no. That car doesn't leave my garage except for shows I personally attend. It's not a loaner. It's not something you just take for a joyride. I told him straight up that it wasn't happening. He got pissy about it. I was working from home a few days later and decided to go check on the cars around midday. I have a detached 3-car garage with a full security system. My wife has the code for emergencies since we've been together so long. I walked into the garage and the Shelby was just gone. Empty space where it should be. My heart dropped into my stomach. I pulled up the security footage on my phone right there in the garage. The timestamp showed that morning around 9:47 a.m. My father-in-law walks in like he owns the place, goes straight to the lockbox where I keep the keys. He must have watched me open it before at some point and starts the car, backs it out and drives away, clear as day on camera. I called my wife. She was at her sister's place doing something. I asked her if she knew her dad took my car. She sounded confused and said no, asked what I was talking about. I told her to call him right now and find out where my car was. About an hour later, my wife called back. She tried calling him 5 times and he wasn't picking up. Now she was getting worried too. The message showed as read, no response. I waited, checked my phone every 2 minutes, pulled up the security footage again to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Nope, there it was. My father-in-law committing grand theft auto in high definition. Around 4:45 p.m., he finally responded, 3 words that made my blood boil. Relax, I sold it. You'll get your money. I had to read it 3 times. He sold my car, without asking, without permission, without paperwork, without anything. Just took it and sold it like it belongs to him. I called him right away. He picked up sounding casual, like nothing was wrong. Started explaining how he found a buyer who was willing to pay $165,000 cash. Said he took his $15K finder's fee for setting up the deal. Then he'd send me the rest minus what I owed him for all the dinners and help over the years. I lost my mind. Started yelling at him through the phone. The man stole my car, sold it, kept money for the sale, and genuinely believed he was entitled to more. He told me I was overreacting, said I had plenty of money and one car doesn't matter, said he needed this and I should be grateful he got such a good price. I told him he committed a felony. He laughed, actually laughed, said I wouldn't do anything about it because it would upset my wife and tear the family apart, said I needed to think about the bigger picture here. I called the regular line and explained the situation. My father-in-law stole my vehicle and sold it. I had video evidence, text messages, everything documented. I sent over all the documentation, the VIN, the security footage, screenshots of our text conversation, his contact information, filed a formal stolen vehicle report. My wife came home maybe 30 minutes after I got off the phone with the police. She walked in and immediately I could tell her family had been talking to her. She started crying before she even said anything, begged me not to press charges against her dad, said he made a mistake, said we could work it out as a family, said I was going to ruin his life over this. I told her point blank that he committed a felony. He stole a vehicle worth close to $200,000 and sold it without permission. This stopped from being a family matter the second he drove off my property with my car. She kept crying, saying I was being heartless, that he's her father, that surely we could figure something out. I asked her what exactly she expected me to figure out. He stole my car, sold it, kept money that wasn't his, then told me I owed him more. There was nothing to figure out. The police were already involved. She asked me to call them back and drop it. Said she'd talk to him and make him give back the money. I told her that wasn't how this worked. You don't get to commit grand theft auto and just return the money like you borrowed $20. She wasn't listening to me. Just kept saying I was destroying her family. The next morning, the police located him at his apartment. They arrested him around 6 a.m. Turns out he hadn't even given the buyer proper paperwork, just a handwritten bill of sale with a forged signature, my signature. The buyer was some guy he met at a bar who paid cash and didn't ask questions. The whole thing was sketchy from start to finish. The police managed to track down the buyer. The guy showed them the handwritten bill of sale and claimed he had no idea the car was stolen. Shelby as evidence. They told me I'd get it back eventually, but it could take weeks while they processed everything. The buyer was understandably pissed. He was out $165,000 and might not get it back. My father-in-law definitely didn't have it anymore. From what I heard later, he'd already blown through $8,000 in 2 days. No idea what he spent it on, but knowing him, it was something stupid. My wife gave me an ultimatum later that day. She said if I didn't drop the charges, she was leaving. I told her that was her choice, but I wasn't dropping anything. She said I was choosing a car over our marriage. I said her father chose to commit a crime and she was choosing to defend that. We went back and forth for a while, but neither of us was budging. She packed a bag that night and left. Said she was staying with her sister. I didn't try to stop her. The prosecutor's office contacted me about a week after the arrest. They were moving forward with charges: grand theft auto, fraud, and forgery. This was serious. Potentially years in prison serious. They asked if I wanted to pursue full restitution. I said absolutely. The car was worth $180,000 minimum. I'd put additional money into restoration over the years. They needed documentation of everything. I spent 2 days putting together a complete file. Every receipt, every invoice, every piece of documentation related to that car. Purchase price, parts, labor, storage, insurance, everything. The total came out to about $215,000. Sent it all to the prosecutor. The buyer filed a civil suit against my father-in-law trying to recover his money. Good luck with that. From what I understood, he didn't have the assets worth garnishing. His apartment was rented. His car was worth maybe $3,000. He didn't own anything of value. Around this time, it really hit me that my marriage was probably over. My wife had made her choice. She picked her criminal father over basic decency and respect. I wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed. I thought after 6 years together, she'd have better judgment than this. The next couple of weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and conversations with the prosecutor's office. They were building a solid case. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, text messages, the forged bill of sale, testimony from the buyer, financial records showing he'd already spent a chunk of the money. I spent the evening researching divorce proceedings in my state, what the process looked like, how assets got divided. I had a prenup, thankfully. Had insisted on it before we got married. My wife hadn't been happy about it at the time, but agreed. Now I was grateful for my past self's foresight. Most of my wealth had come before the marriage anyway. I'd kept finances separate. She wasn't going to get what she probably thought she was going to get. A few days later, a process server showed up at my house. Divorce papers. She'd actually done it. I signed for them and immediately reached out to someone who I knew handled these situations. Forwarded everything over. He said given the prenup and the separation of assets, this should be straightforward. My wife was asking for spousal support and half of everything. Her reasoning was that she'd supported me emotionally during our marriage, and that counted for something. My guy said emotional support doesn't override a prenup. Update 1. Posted about the situation a few weeks back and got enough messages asking for an update that I figured I'd write one. Trial happened last week. The whole thing was almost anticlimactic given how long the build-up took. Prosecution presented everything methodically. Security footage of him entering my garage and driving off with the car. Text messages where I explicitly denied him permission twice. Testimony from the buyer who explained the sketchy bar transaction. The forged bill of sale with my signature that looked nothing like my actual signature. Financial records showing he'd blown through $8,000 in 2 days at a casino, on furniture, and bottles at some club. His defense was basically that he thought I wouldn't mind since we were family. The family helps each other out. That he was planning to give me most of the money back eventually. His public defender tried to paint it as a misunderstanding that got out of hand. The jury took 3 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. Grand theft auto, fraud, and forgery. Sentencing happened the next day. Judge gave him 4 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 2. Full restitution order for $233,500. That includes the car's sale value, all restoration costs, legal fees, storage fees, everything I'd documented. My mother-in-law was in the courtroom, started screaming when the sentence came down. Bailiffs had to physically remove her. She was yelling about how I destroyed their family, how I was evil, how karma would get me. I just sat there and watched her get escorted out. I left the courthouse and went home. That was that. My divorce finalized faster than I expected. My wife's representation tried to argue I'd made promises during the marriage to financially support her family. Had zero proof because it never happened. Prenup held up perfectly. She got basically nothing. Some personal items, her car, and that's it. Haven't heard from her since the final papers were signed. I added 2 more cars to my collection last week. A 1970 Plymouth Barracuda and a 1963 Corvette Stingray, both in excellent condition. Paid cash for both. The Barracuda needs some minor work, but nothing major. The Corvette is pristine. My ex-father-in-law has 2 years minimum before he's eligible for parole. Even then, he'll need to show rehabilitation and have a solid plan for restitution. Given his track record, I'm betting he serves the full 4 years. The civil complaints the buyer filed are apparently moving forward. Found out through the grapevine that there might be additional fraud charges coming related to other deals he'd done. Turns out when you investigate someone thoroughly, you find all kinds of skeletons. Not my problem, but I won't pretend I'm not satisfied hearing about it. That's the update. Your father-in-law didn't make a mistake. He executed a plan. He asked, you said no. He waited until you were distracted, used inside knowledge to access your garage, took the keys, sold a 6-figure car to a random guy from a bar, forged your signature, kept a cut, and then told you to relax. As for your ex, this is where it gets blunt. When someone watches their parent commit a felony against their spouse and their first instinct is, please protect him from consequences, that tells you exactly where you rank. It wasn't about a car. It was about whether you were expected to tolerate blatant disrespect and criminal behavior to preserve her comfort. You refused. And frankly, good. Because if you had folded on this, it would have set the precedent that your boundaries are negotiable if someone cries hard enough. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.